Scott, welcome back. I'd like to start today by having you listen to what Pierre Poilievre had to say now that he's, of course, been re-elected. Here you go.
Listen, we had an election in April the 28th. It was a very close one. What people are seeing is that Mark Carney, while he made grand promises of change, he's even worse than Justin Trudeau. Under his leadership, our deficit has grown, unemployment is rising, $60 billion of net investment has fled our country. The U.S. tariffs have doubled on Canada, and Carney is now losing a trade war with China. He is clearly failing to live up to the massive promises that he made. And while he gets gushing media coverage for meetings and photo ops and grand announcements that amount to nothing, Mark Carney is one walking, talking, broken promise.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. He's back. Scott, give me your take.
Well, first of all, a lot of people wondered, would we see another side of Pierre Poilievre? Would we see something softer, a little more constructive? Yeah. Might we see a politician who seemed to have grown, to have matured, to have blossomed like a flower, if you will? And I think the answer is no. So, look, I think every car salesman knows after 2 days on the job that there's a secret to persuading people, and that is to tell them something they think already. And the challenge with the political pitch we just heard is that it is at odds with what people think, not in concert with what people think. So obviously, Pierre Poilievre needs to put the boots to Mark Carney. Obviously, he needs to criticize Mark Carney. And obviously, Mark Carney ain't perfect. There's lots of room to criticize him. And maybe even around this, hey, wait a second, didn't he tell us he was going to be the fantastic leader and get deals and solve problems? And has he? The challenge is that people don't think he's better. Or, pardon me, they do not think that he's worse than Justin Trudeau. They don't. Like, that is a flat-out contradiction of what people think. So when, as a political leader, you start by saying that, people immediately begin by shaking their head. And I go back to the car salesman. If you're trying to get someone to buy a new Buick, you don't tell them, right, something they don't believe. If they're shaking their head as they look at you, you're in trouble. So he needs to find a smarter, more strategic way into his criticism of Carney, pick something that people believe already, and then push that thing open wider. This is ham-fisted in my view.
Well, look, first of all, to hear Pierre Poilievre say that he's worse than Justin Trudeau, I mean, that's unbelievable to begin with, because we know how he went after Justin Trudeau when he was still Prime Minister. I mean, for goodness sake, even if you like Pierre Poilievre, the guy's been Prime Minister for 3.5 months. Give it a rest. I mean, it just seems so far-fetched to me, so I agree with you with respect to that. But secondly, this idea, as you said off the top, Scott, that maybe he will have developed a different persona now. I don't know, they say matured, whatever, but that maybe isn't the right word. Clearly, that's not going to be happening. So does that serve him well, or does this open the door for some people who think, you know what, it's time for Pierre Poilievre, whether he won this by-election or not, to call it a day? He is not going to be the Conservative leader to get them into power.
Well, that ain't happening. So I think two things. Everything you asked seems reasonable, but I believe fervently two things. One, there is no threat to Pierre Poilievre. He has complete control and command of his political party, and they seem absolutely intent. Like, people questioned, his by-election, the incumbent got 82%. Might Pierre Poilievre get embarrassed, only get 70% or 65%? I never believed that was a real risk. It wasn't a real risk. Just like people now question, might this leadership review be in jeopardy? Not going to be at risk. He's in complete control. He's going to be the leader. He's going to compete the next election. That's thing number one. Thing number two is he ain't changing. And he has made it crystal clear, both in terms of what he has told us and the manner in which he has said it, that he ain't changing. He is who he is. He is doubling down. He is digging in. And they are making a bet. And their bet is Liberals can't win 5 times in a row. If we have a rematch, the Liberals can't outperform the way they did in the last election. That seems reasonable. But here's another thing that seems reasonable. Since the election, Pierre Poilievre's party has dropped in support compared to the Liberals. More worryingly, Pierre Poilievre's impressions among Canadians has dropped precipitously. And what I know from working in politics forever is that once people get a fix on you, it is really hard to change it. And if you aren't even willing to change, you sure as hell ain't going to change what people think. That's a challenge for him.
I brought up yesterday when I saw that too. The numbers are, so far behind. But to be fair, how much of that is out of sight, out of mind?
Maybe. Fair enough. And it's reasonable. So here's the question you pose is a good one, which is, if we think that his numbers have dropped, and the polls tell us they have, why? Could be that he's out of sight, out of mind. I have a different theory. My theory is the issues have become bigger. And Pierre Poilievre spent years honing, shaping himself into the most potent political player on the stage. And now people's expectations have changed. They're not looking for a politician. They're looking for a leader. And I think the severity of the issues, the seriousness of what's at stake, I think that has diminished him. And his refusal to rise to look more serious, to continue to be pure politics, to continue to always be partisan, I think that diminishes him. It reinforces the perception of, I know what that guy is. That guy's a politician. Problem is, our economy might get chewed up. Trump might actually try to literally erase our borders. So we need something more than just a garden variety politician. We need somebody who actually can take on these challenges. And I think that's why his numbers, he's shrank as the issues have grown bigger.
Let me ask one other thing, because it came up today. We played a clip of Doug Ford basically, chewing a piece off of Donald Trump, and the suggestion being that, he's trying anyway, it seems like he is, to position himself on the federal stage as opposed to, just being the premier of Ontario. Do you put much credence in that?
I don't personally. I know it's a reasonable thing for people to suspect, because there's obviously been direct clashes between Ford and Poilievre. There's been direct clashes between their camps. We witnessed that close up during the election campaign. But when you talk to Ford's people, they tell you this is a guy who has breakfast every morning in Etobicoke, then drives down to Queen's Park, sits around there. He hates to travel. Right? He hates to be out of his routine. He does not like to not be in Etobicoke. And the idea that this guy is going to shake hands and go to strawberry socials in, the west coast of British Columbia and, rural Quebec, it's just not on. That's not who he is. I don't think that's what he's doing. I think he is trying to build his brand, reinforce his brand, make himself the most important conservative in the country, and make himself essential to the federal scene, particularly the prime minister, because he thinks that benefits him, benefits his party, benefits his government, benefits the province. But I don't think he's gunning for Pierre Poilievre's job. I really don't.
Last thing I want to ask you, just really quick, we have a Leger poll out here now suggesting that the PQ is on track to basically win the next provincial election, even though it's still a year away, a little over a year away. What do you think of this, and what do you think of the Liberals who just don't continue to kind of gain any traction here at all?
Yeah, it was interesting. It's a little tick down from June. Maybe in the aftermath of his election as leader, Pablo got a bit of a popularity bump. But, this is a statistically significant sag for them, down 5 points according to the tracking by Leger. But I think the most interesting thing about this is that the cactus look dead and buried. They look like Justin Trudeau a year ago, and Legault looks like Dead Man Walking. And, I think if I was Rodriguez and the Liberals, that would give me hope in the sense that tells you there's going to be a disruption, that this election is going to realign the political electorate, and maybe in the course of that, there's an opportunity for him to soak up some votes because there's a big change. If parties get flushed away, then a lot of movement happens in those 4 weeks of a campaign, and maybe you can catch on to that. But right now, if you're the Péquistes, you like where you're at. You're not too high in the polls, so you can't, you can't start measuring the drapes. But they look like they got the whip hand.
All right, Scott, I thank you. It's good to have you back. I appreciate it.